going on, everybody? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to the Will Cotchery YouTube Network with your host, yours truly, the lead relaxer, the first team All-Pro couch potato himself, Will Cotchery II. It's a pleasure to have you guys back today with another episode of my YouTube channel. So today I want to introduce a new series to my channel. It's going to be called Corrupted Chords. So it's going to be a series that really highlights whether it's duos, the trios, quartets, however you want to call them, the pairs, groupings. This is going to be a series that really highlights and illuminates some of the sport's most popular groupings within a team, and how it came to an end abruptly, or whether it's injuries or off the field issues, whatever, trades, whatever the case may be. These are groupings and tandems that fell short of their fullest potential, probably even to a championship level. So I feel like it's going to be a fascinating piece. It's going to be a fascinating addition to my channel. So hope you guys stay tuned in. And why not, with all the free agent news, especially with Odell Beckham Jr., why not start off with this topic right here as for my first episode in the Corrupted Chords series. The 2010s receiving core of the New York Giants. They had such promise at the position with Odell Beckham Jr. headlining, obviously, Victor Cruz, and even Hakeem Nicks. So let's analyze what happened to this trio, this would-be dominant, if everything fell into place, dominant trio. But before we get into that, let's analyze what the New York Giants are historically as a franchise. Despite all of their players on offense, they're historically great players on that side of the ball. This is a franchise that has established its legacy on the defensive side of the ball. And it's obvious when you look at the four greatest players in their franchise's history. Three of those guys played on defense. So let's start off with the 1950s with the one and only Emlyn Tunnell. He's one of the more unheralded players in the National Football League's history. This guy played 11 seasons for the Giants, and he was the first African-American to not only play for the New York Giants, but he was also the first African-American to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, thanks to his 79 career interceptions, which was at the time of his retirement the NFL record for a single player in history. Then, of course, we can never forget Lawrence Taylor, one of the 10 most greatest players in the history of the National Football League. One of the menacing, game-changing forces, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and of course going down to most recently with the Giants' history, Michael Strahan, who had he's the NFL's official single-season sack record holder, and he's ended his career as a Super Bowl champion. So you can see right there, the three of the four greatest players in history of the franchise were all on the defensive side of the ball. But as we move forward into history, more recently, we saw how dynamic their receiver play can be. And that dynamic pass-catching ability started with Hakeem Nicks. Drawing comparisons to Hines Ward and Anquan Boldin for his toughness on the field, and even Michael Irvin, Nicks was brought in to replace Plexico Burress, who was falling, stock was dropping basically due to his injuries. So he was brought in 2009 NFL draft, picked in the first round to replace their former #1 receiver in Plexico. Starting only 6 games as a rookie, he finished his first-year campaign with 47 receptions for 790 yards and 6 touchdowns, which is not bad for your first year in the professional ranks. 2010, his target amount went from 74 to 128, and with that he finished with 79 catches for 1,052 and 11 scores. Now, this is where, in 2011, was the season where he really took off as a player. Now, even though his touchdown and his catch totals dipped a little bit, he had his career best with the 1,192 yards. And and once the postseason came, he was unbelievable. He was unguardable. During their run to the Super Bowl, their 4-game stretch to their championship victory, Hakeem Nicks finished in 4 games with 28 receptions for 444 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now I need you guys, to understand something. 28 catches for 444 yards and 4 touchdowns in 4 outings. That is 7 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown per game. He did this in the postseason run. He finished not only Larry Fitzgerald had a better postseason run. That was in 2008 when they lost to the Steelers in Super Bowl 43. He in the 100-year history of the National Football League, only Larry Fitzgerald, a Mount Rushmore receiver, top 5, however you want to call him, only Larry Fitzgerald was better in the postseason, in a single postseason run, than Hakeem Nicks. That is almost unparalleled for what he accomplished in just really a month's time. Now let's bring Victor Cruz into the equation. So crazy enough, looking back on it, based on his actual peak, it was hard to believe that he was undrafted in 2010 coming out of the University of Massachusetts. So he only appeared in 3 games as a rookie with no starts. So he was just there. He was just a placeholder as a rookie, but immediately made a transcendent impact in 2011 in his second year. Only started in 7 games. He finished the season with 82 receptions for 1,536 yards and 9 touchdowns, averaging 96 yards per game, having almost a 63% catch percentage in his direction. If you really think about it, his 2011 season is probably one of the bigger Pro Bowl snubs in the history of the sport. Now, granted, I feel like a lot had to do with him not starting, but if you're putting up the numbers like that, you should be Pro Bowl bound. I understand people have, their varying opinions about all-star voting in sports, but I think that does mean a lot to players. So I feel like he should have been in that. He should have definitely represented the Giants for the 2011 season for the Pro Bowl. Now, even though Victor was more quiet in the postseason that year, only posting 21 receptions for 269 and a score, his postseason average was still around 5 receptions per game, averaging just over 67 yards. So it's not terrible. Obviously, it's not transcendent, but it's still enough for them to get to the Super Bowl in that season. Then, of course, in 2011, long story short, the Giants once again upset the New England Patriots in dramatic fashion in the Super Bowl for the second time in a 4-year stretch. So all was well in the Big Apple once again, especially even more so this time because you have a dynamic receiving duo moving forward, Eli Manning coming off the greatest season of his career to date to that point. So the transition to the 2012 season, Victor Cruz will actually end up getting his rightful Pro Bowl selection, even though his receiving yards dipped about 400 to 500 yards, but he did set career best in catches with 86 and touchdowns with 10. Now, Hakeem Nicks, on the other hand, did not have the same amount of fortune. In week 2 of the 2012 season against Tampa Bay, he injured his knee, and he missed the following 3 games. And even though he returned from that injury, he just was not the same player. And the even sadder thing about it, little that we knew at that time, this would be like the slow deterioration of a once budding star in this league. And even though Nicks finished 2012 with 53 catches, 692, and 3 scores, which is pedestrian numbers, still was a huge fall from grace from his 2011 historic 2011 campaign. Now, before the duo made their attempt to come back from a lackluster 2012 season, so to speak, Victor Cruz signed a 5-year, $45.879 million contract extension, which included his $2.879 million free agent tender leading up to the 2013 season. So the deal was in total was a 6-year contract. So so the franchise locked up their star receiver for years to come. Shortly after, in August that same year, Victor Cruz he suffered a heel bruise in a preseason game, which was at the time deemed minimal in nature. But like Hakeem Nicks, this would be just the start of something that will continue to resurface in the future for the 2 wide receivers. Now, even though Hakeem Nicks didn't record a touchdown reception in 2013, he still improved on his numbers from 2012, going from 53 catches to 56 and going from 692 yards to 896. So obviously not an all-pro campaign by any means, but he still made the jump in 15 games. He still was a constant contributor in some realm or fashion. Now, going into 2014, that was the season that really got ugly for the receiving pair, the pass-catching pair itself. And right when the new league year started, Hakeem Nicks, he was released by the Giants after the season, and then he signed a 1-year deal worth $5.5 million with the Indianapolis Colts. So effectively ending what could have been a dynamic duo even at that time. As for Victor Cruz, on October 12, 2014 against the Eagles, Cruz suffered a torn patellar tendon, which prematurely ended his 2014 campaign. So in just 6 outings that season, Cruz just had 337 yards and just 1 touchdown. Luckily for Giants fans, however, you had a spectacular rookie by the name of Odell Beckham Jr., who started LSU, who was picked early in the first round to help it bring some spice back to the receiving core. And obviously he made headlines. Even though they lost the game, they made headlines against the arch-rival Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night with the acrobatic one-handed catch, would really immediately put him into superstardom status. So the first-year sensation, he finished 2014 with 97 receptions for 1,305 yards and 12 scores, averaging a whopping 108.8 yards per game on a 70% catch percentage. Now this would bring hope for New York fans all over the state that imagine having OBJ and a healthy Victor Cruz available. This could be a spectacular duo. This could potentially replace the Hakeem Nicks and the Victor Cruz tandem, because now you go from the trademark salsa dancing from Victor Cruz to all the elaborate celebrations of OBJ. So it was reason to celebrate in the Big Apple. So we thought.
Great having you back, Vic. You looking fresh.
Looks like you would feel like it too. Anyway, can't wait to take the field with you this year.
And take back my life, which you stole.
We got some good chemistry out there.
Yep, it's gonna be awesome.
Speaking of chemistry, what do you put in that hair?
If you think about it, we're lucky to be teammates.
Not as lucky as when you made that one-handed catch.
I do not remember Victor being this weird.
Yeah, yikes. Even another reason for Giants fans everywhere to celebrate was, at age 27 for the 2015 season, Hakeem Nicks will return back to the franchise. So if all happened well, we could have had that dominant trio that we was all anticipating. Instead, after a long rehab, Cruz gave us the update to the media saying that he wasn't fully recovered from his injuries, but he was mostly there. But, you know, he re-aggravated his calf at the start of camp in the summer, and ultimately he ended up missing the entire 2015 regular season. And the Giants officially placed him on season-ending injury reserve on November 17, 2015. Later in 2015, Hakeem Nicks ultimately ended up signing with the New York Giants back in November of that year. But, of course, he didn't really do much with his stint anyway in his return. As for OBJ, he did have a career-best year with 96 catches, 1,450 yards, and 13 touchdowns. So he was well on his way, as I said before, to superstardom. But only thing is, it was going to be without, you know, the other 2 teammates. Hakeem Nicks' truncated 2015 season would end up being the last of his NFL career at the crazy age of just 27. So that's what makes it more frustrating for a fan. Even though I'm not a Giants fan, I would have loved to see that trio all healthy. Because in 2015, Hakeem Nicks was 27 years old. Had he played, Victor Cruz would have been 29 years old, and OBJ was only 23. So you have 3 star ability receivers under the age of 30 on one roster in the Big Apple, in the biggest market in the United States of America. You couldn't tell me that would have been box office. So in 2016, Victor Cruz, he did have a better rebound. In 12 games, he had 39 catches for 586 yards in the score. So obviously far from his Pro Bowl ways, but you know, it's better than 2014. Unfortunately, that would be the end of his career as well, as the injuries were too much for him and Nicks going forward. And despite his dip in yards and touchdowns, Odell Beckham Jr. set a career-best 101 receptions in the 2016 season at age 24. So ultimately, at this point, he is the guy. He was the guy going forward, which is sad to see as a fan of the NFL. To add even more insult to injury, no pun intended, Odell Beckham Jr. finished 2017 on the injury reserve after only playing and starting in 2 games. Finished with only 25 receptions for 302 yards and 3 touchdowns. Even in 2008, when he only played in 12 games, he finished with 77 receptions for 1,052 yards and 6 scores. By season's end in 2018, his trade to the Browns sent shockwaves throughout the league. So the Giants in the trade end up receiving a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and safety Jabril Peppers in the exchange. Nowadays for Victor Cruz, he's on ESPN doing his thing, so it's happy to see him happy. Just talk about the game that he loves. As for Hakeem Nicks, God's willing, he's enjoying his life after football peacefully somewhere. But as a fan of the game that I watched for so many years, it's really bittersweet that even though everybody seemed at peace to a degree, but for the most part, but at the same time, it's really difficult to watch. What could have been a historically successful wide receiving group when it was heavily derailed by injuries, and it was really unfortunate to see. The guy I really feel sorry about the most for is Eli Manning, and the reason being is because entering the stretch in which this great trio, or would-be great trio, was forming, Eli was just stepping into the prime of his career. After averaging around 3,500 yards for the start of his career, in 2009 he averaged a career high 4,021. He passed for a career high 4,021 yards and career high 27 touchdowns for that season. The next year in 2010, he dipped to 4,002 yards, but he reset his career touchdown mark to 31. So basically, in that 7-year stretch from basically 2009 to 2015, he had 5 seasons. 5 out of those 7 seasons were over 4,000 yards, and he garnered 3 of his Pro Bowl selection seasons in that stretch. From 2009 to 2011, the Giants' offense ranked 8th, 5th, and 8th respectively in total offense during that 3-year stretch. That was the greatest 3-year stretch of offense for the Giants since the late 1960s. So in 1967 they finished 3rd in total offense. 68 they finished 5th, and 69 they finished 6th. So which was an average around 4th in the league. So this was their best stretch of offense in a 3-year span, and what that was like 40, 50 years. So that gives you a small glimpse of what that offense could have been. Imagine how more dominant they would have been if all 3 of those receivers were healthy in that stretch. And that hurts, man. I'm sorry. That is devastating for the fact that injuries really plagued like those receivers' careers, especially Victor Cruz more specifically, and Hakeem Nicks to be specific. Obviously, OBJ still has a bright future elsewhere, even though he won't be in the Giants uniform. But I would say Barkley or bust. It seems like, man, God bless his soul in New York going forward. But that's the end of the video, guys. That's the first episode of the Correct the Course series. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope to see you guys next time. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and give me some suggestions and recommendations to do in more videos in this series or just in my channel in general. So you guys have a blessed day. Be well.